Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. 20 years of Final Fantasy. 20 years of Final Fantasy. So I want to take you on a journey because Final Fantasy is a series, it's a franchise that has been in my life for these last 20 years. And here's the thing. I kind of came across it by accident. And I'm going to get into that. And I'm also going to let you all know the Final Fantasy games that I have played that I remember, and also some things that I have seen as well. Because Final Fantasy, it is at this point a multimedia franchise. And again, it's been in my life for 20 years, and it's been surprisingly consistent. And I think that's really cool. So I want to talk about my experiences with Final Fantasy, and yes, I'm going to at least mention math once, because there's a lot of math in Final Fantasy, and that has actually impacted the kind of content that I like make sometimes. It fits right into some of that, and I want to get into that too. But I want to take you all back. But before I get into how I got into Final Fantasy, I'm going to let you know about some of the ones I've played because I haven't played every single Final Fantasy game, believe it or not. And I say that because like I have played a lot, but there's definitely some that I haven't, notably the earlier ones, and then like some of the ones that are harder to track down. But I'm gonna get into it because with Final Fantasy, it's kind of cool because you have some people like myself who have played a fair amount of them at this point. There's some that have played like maybe one or two. There's some who've played literally all of them, and of course, there's people out there who haven't, and I think those people should try it. But anyway, here's the games that I've played to start off. Also, assume that there's going to be spoilers along the way for everything Final Fantasy. I will try to keep that to a minimum, but I make no promises. I just wanted to let y'all know. Anyway, let's get into it. So here's the ones that I've played. Not in order that I've played them, but just the ones that I've played. So five, six, seven, all the sequels and seven to seven spin-offs. Not all of them, but a deal of them, right? Because not only have I played seven, I've also played Dirge of Cerberus, and we'll get into that. And I've played Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. Oh man, let me reverse that. Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII, specifically Reunion. Um, I want to say Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. It's like it bugs me that the order is out of it. Anyway, I played Crisis Core. Um, 8, 9, 10, 10 2, 13, 14, 15, Dissidia NT, um, Tactics, Final Fantasy Tactics, a little bit of Crystal Chronicles, and then in terms of the stuff that's related to those games, I've seen Advent Children a bunch of times, including the complete version. Also, I've seen bits and pieces of Spirits Within. Um, and also back to Final Fantasy, I've seen Last Order. Last Order Final Fantasy VII, which initially, it was an anime. It told the story of Zack, but then Crisis Core came out. I think a year later or two. Either way, Last Order was actually pretty good. It was nice. So those are the games, and I've said that pretty quickly, but I hope you got all that. It's like because it's largely just like 5 through 10/10 2, and then 13 through 15, and then some spin-offs, and like I'm pretty sure there's some ones that I'm missing, but either way, I want to talk about each of those games a little bit, but I just want to take you on the journey to where it all began. So, my journey with Final Fantasy actually began with 8. Yeah. So, I came across Final Fantasy 8 and a Best Buy ad that was in the paper. And so I'm like, hey, that seems pretty interesting. So I went out and I got it, right? And then here's the thing, right? I did like the gameplay. I like the combat. I didn't fully get the junction system at the time. I would later get it and milk it. But anyway, I like that. I like the music, but it actually didn't click with me fully because outside of like Quistis and like Renoa, I didn't really like a lot of the characters like early in the game. And I wasn't crazy about the story once it slowed down a little because Final Fantasy VIII starts off with a bang. If you know, you know. And it's pretty action oriented for a while, then it really slows down once you get to the gardens. like Balam Garden and all that stuff. And that part did not interest me. And then you go outside, you go and explore and all that, and it's just like, eh. So for a while, I dropped it, right? Like I did pick it back up, and I do think that it's actually pretty good. I don't think the story is perfect, but I like it overall. So anyway, I dropped it for a while, and um, I later came across Final Fantasy VII in Blockbuster, and I picked it up because I heard some things about it that were cool, and it looked cool, it sounded cool, and I got it, and it freaking blew my mind. It's a great game, and when I talk about each of the games I played in more depth, I'll get into that too. But know that it rocked my world back then, and I was playing it at a time where I think it was really cool and during my journey because like I played a lot of games at that point, but like a lot of the games I've played at that up until that point didn't quite have like as heavy like serious like grounded themes because it's like I played Mortal Kombat pretty early on, same with like Killer Instinct and stuff like that. And they had some pretty serious themes too, but there wasn't a lot of story to them, or at least not that was readily available. Nothing that really grounded them. I played games like Sonic, Spyro, Jet Moto. That was at the time, and yeah, I remember that game. And I played a lot of other games too. Like I had played Pokemon at that point, but I had played the first gen and the second gen and all that stuff. And again, like I played a lot of games at that point, but to me, uh, they didn't really connect with me in terms of those like serious tones. They connected with me in a lot of other ways though. But anyway, when I think about this stuff, I think about games like Final Fantasy 7 and 8, sure. But at the same time, when I was trying those out, I was playing games like Metal Gear Solid. Sorry, sorry, I'm good. I was playing games like Metal Gear Solid. I was playing games like The Legend of Dragoon, and I was exploring just different things like that. And games of that era that I was playing a lot of is like they dealt with life, they dealt with death, they dealt with like purpose, nihilism. They dealt with a lot of heavy things, and with Final Fantasy VII, there's a whole lot about like loss and hope, and what do you do when you lose someone that you care about. And so, that pulled me in. And like 8 ended up being pretty good. And I got better with the junction system and even more so over time. Because seriously, with a junction system, you can make your characters stupidly broken. Um, so at that point, though, right, I had just played 7 and 8. And it was like that way for a while. And then, like, with 7, I just kind of got into it at the right time. Because, like, when I played, right, it was back in 2003, like Final Fantasy 7. And then a few years down the line, I'm still cool with that. And but then you started getting more Final Fantasy content. And like I said, I seen the last order of Final Fantasy 7, and I seen like Final Fantasy 7 Advent Children. And those are really cool, and I actually saw clips of those through AMVs before I got to see the actual material. um because that was a time like I used to watch AMVs, and somehow that did not make it into my anime video, my 30 years of anime video. Because with these videos, there's a lot of content. My life, there's been a lot of things in it, and when I try to think of these topics, I try to think about it as much as I can. But there's gonna be stuff that I missed. So yeah, I used to watch AMVs. They were cool. You don't really see them a lot these days, but it could also be that I'm not looking for them the same way I was, right? Anyway, so those videos were cool. There was also like a book that came out. I didn't read the book, but they did have those games. They also had like Before Crisis, but that didn't make it over here to the States. And they did bring Crisis Core, like the original Crisis Core, but it was for PSP, and I didn't own a PSP. Um, but anyway, there's a lot of Final Fantasy VII in my life in particular. Now, I got like a PS2 that same year that I had played that, and yet despite that, I kind of initially missed um, that first wave of like the PS2 or of Final Fantasy games, um, along with 9. But I would eventually get to them. Well, a good deal of them anyway. Um, so it was kind of crazy because like my focus kind of like shifted for a while because I was still playing a lot of Metal Gear Solid. I was trying some other games too. Like I would try so many different games, and a lot of Devil May Cry. And when I got my PS2, there was a lot of other games that I tried, and I like Final Fantasy 10 and 10 2 were on my list. and same for like Kingdom Hearts and stuff like that, but I didn't make it. Speaking of Kingdom Hearts, you know, I have played those too. And those are not strictly speaking Final Fantasy games, but at the same time, I mean, pretty much they have a lot of Final Fantasy characters in there. Just saying. So it's just like, at least for those first two main games and several of the like side games that spin off. There's a lot of Kingdom Hearts games, but anyway, they were not really prevalent in three, and that was kind of weird. And I'm sure there was a reason for that. But anyway, like so I've played those two, um, and they won't be the focus of this video. But I mean, it's just like we're talking about Final Fantasy, and it's like you got to talk about that part of my journey too. So anyway, like I played some Final Fantasy games here and there. There were some during college, like notably six. Which blew my mind, and there are times where six rivals my top spot because seven is my favorite Final Fantasy game, but six gets right up there, you know. And so, um, and then over the years, again, I would play some here and there. Like I said, in college there were six, and 13, and things like that. But like I think in recent years, I've been able to find some more time and just dive deeper and deeper into like the Final Fantasy hole. Um, and also, speaking of the college days, I played Dirge of Cerberus during that time. I don't know. It's not a bad game. For the record, it's painfully mediocre, and I feel like it shouldn't be, because it's like yeah, take a really popular character from Final Fantasy VII, give them their own game, and then I feel like you don't give them that much to do. I mean, like they're doing stuff, but it's like Also, it's just like I didn't feel like they fleshed it out and refined it as well as they could. But anyway, so like I think I would play these games and I would watch these things over the years, but like I said, I would dive deeper into Final Fantasy, at least in terms of playing the games, uh, in recent years. But so in addition to playing the games, and watching the movies and anime, um, I would also watch a lot of videos about Final Fantasy over time, and because that's been the part of like these things that I'm like really passionate about. It's like, yeah, if it's a game, I done played it. If there's some anime involved, I probably watched it, and then it's just like, well, I've also watched videos about the topic. So it's like even when I know like the source material like really well, I still want to watch stuff about it and see different takes on it. Um, and I think one of the cool things with Final Fantasy is I've gotten to connect with some awesome people over the years, and like what's wild is sometimes I will just like be saying stuff, right? But you never know who connects to it, right? So it's like I'll be talking to someone like I'll be talking to some people online, and if I say something, like because I'm at a point in my life where it's just like, oh my god, I got so many things to say about like everything, and while you could argue that's always been true, I think what's cool about it is like I'll go like fully in even when no one will act sometimes. But but more seriously though, it's like I'll be expressing why I like this or why I like that. And then there's some people like that might connect with that, and it might be like people that I've known for a while. And it's like, wait a minute, whoa, wait a minute, you like Final Fantasy as well? Because there was like a friend of mine who like I had known for years. And I had said something online about Final Fantasy, and then they were telling me about their experience with it. I'm like, oh my god, how have we never talked about this series? How we never talk about these games? Like what? Like it's crazy. So I think like Final Fantasy, like I said, it's been pretty consistent. Like I have the games have kind of trickled into my life, and then there's been like an increased focus over time. And also, what I really like is so as I'm doing my channel and I've been like fleshing it out and doing what I want. Games come up a lot, and like Final Fantasy comes up a lot because there's so much math in it at every turn. And what's really cool though is like there's a lot of math in the each combat system that you come into like with those games, and that is like one of the things I really like about Final Fantasy. It's just like so at this point, uh there's been some things that they have innovated. There's been some things that they popularized, but there's a lot of things that like some RPGs share in common. And even with that, like Final Fantasy always finds a way to mix it up, and I like that. And so yeah, it's like it's really cool. And again, it's just been so consistent in my life. It's kind of crazy. And I've been reflecting on that recently. It's like, there's always like something, right? It's like even when I'm not playing like a new game, right? There's always some material in my life with Final Fantasy. It seems. So going into the games that I've played, again, the ones that I remember. Um, so I'll kind of go in chronological order, not when I played them, but like the numbering more or less. But I'll deviate when it's a spin-off, if that makes sense. So we'll go from there. So with five, I like five. I played that I think either last year or the year before that, and it was fun. There's so many ways to travel in that game, and I really like the combat system and the ability to change like classes and see what works for you. There's a lot of customization in there, and it was really fun. Um, I do think like the big bad of that game is a kind of question mark in a sense. I'm like, okay, is this dude a tree? But that's what I took away from that. But anyway, like six, six is amazing. I like six. I like the combat system in six. I like the characters in six. I like the music in six. I just like six. And then you got like with six, Kefka is like he's one of the greatest villains, if not the greatest villain in Final Fantasy, because like he actually gets things done. And you can make an argument that heroes do what heroes do and all, but I mean he kind of wrecked everything. And if you played it, you know exactly what I mean. If you haven't, you should figure out what I mean. But yeah, it was seriously a great game. It does not disappoint. But seven, I mean, I've talked about it a little bit, but oh my God, seven, that's what really pulled me in. Eight started my journey. Seven cemented that journey when it comes to Final Fantasy, and it made me give eight another chance, which is good because I like eight as well. So yeah. The original seven is great. I enjoy the material system so much. I enjoy Tifa. She's my favorite Final Fantasy character of all time. Um, but all the characters are great. And I do think like one of the things that I like that I don't hear a lot of people bring up is that like I like that Barrett is a good father. Like he because he's Marlene's adopted father, right? And I really like that because see here's the thing, right? If you see it on a lot of different media, they don't always depict people of my race as like good fathers, and it's like it's weird. It's like, where did that come from? And yeah, I know someone will try to say where it comes from, but it's like, I don't care. It's bull. But anyway, what I like is that Barrett is a good father. And then so you have someone who's a good father to their adopted child. And then like later you get Zaz, which he's a good father to his biological child. So it's like, regardless of if it's a biological kid or not, we see these two examples of great parents, and they also happen to be black males, which, we don't always get positive depictions of, which is weird. And we need to change that. But yeah, so like Barrett is a cool character too, and like when it comes to that game, I was big on playing with like Cloud, Barrett, and Tifa. But I do like Earth too. She's cool. Um, Actually, again, like all the characters, like Yuffie, Sid, Red 13, or if some of y'all prefer Nanaki. Either way, I'm just used to calling him Red 13. But then there's Vincent as well. Like it's a bunch of good characters. Um, but yeah, so seven's great. And then, like I said, I played the spinoff for or slash sequel to Final Fantasy VII, which was Dirge of Cerberus, and that was eh. It was mediocre, like I said. Like I feel like they took Vincent, a really popular character, and they didn't do that much with him, as far as I'm concerned. And then a big fan of Advent Children. Oh my God, the soundtrack is like Final Fantasy Seven has some dope music. Final Fantasy in general does, and mostly because Nobuo Uematsu, right? Like there's other composers too, but like he's a big deal. But anyway, what I like about Advent Children is like one, the action is top notch, but like it took the soundtrack of like Seven, they added a whole bunch of new tracks just for the movie, but like they rearranged some older tracks and like made them metal, and it's like awesome. And like the metal version of the No Genoa thing, like the Advent Children version, rock version, whatever you want to call it. is my favorite piece of Final Fantasy music because I like the original Genova theme. I like it even more than One Wing Angel, which, just to be clear, I really like. But with the Genova theme, like I like that original so much, but that remix is just like, oh my god, yes, this. Mm. Um, I really like it. Um, but so you have that, and that's great. And like I said, I enjoyed watching Last Order Final Fantasy VII. It was really cool to see. I last year slash this year, because I was playing it for a long time, I played Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, and Crisis Core. Oh my god, I knew the story and it didn't matter. I still enjoyed that game so much. It's like because one, you still have the material system, you have some new combat systems as well in there, or new parts of the combat system. But it's just like there's so many ways to, and this is a mathematical term here, to make Zach stupidly broken. It's a beautiful thing. It's a fun and beautiful game. I dig it so much. And so I've talked about Final Fantasy a lot, but like, I was trying to like get that in. I'm trying not to split this video because it's a pain in editing, but I also don't want it to cut out. So we'll see where I want to go. I might have to either way. Um, so Final Fantasy VIII, like I said, I didn't like it at first. I grew to like it after giving another chance with after playing Final Fantasy VII. There was parts of the story I didn't like, parts of it that I did. The music was dope. Final Fantasy like has some amazing tracks, like I said, but eight probably has where most of my favorite ones live. It's just like they go hard, like because and it's like it's the same dude composing these songs, and they were always good. But then eight, it's just like he turned it up another notch. But yeah, so I actually like the junction system, which I know some people hate. To be fair, it's like I get it. I really do because it's like takes some getting used to. But you can play around with it, right? You can take advantage of math, and you can pretty much like not use the magic, so you can junction proper spells to boost your stats to insane degree and really play with the system. Because here's the thing, in eight, it does something that I kind of hate. It scales your enemies to you, and so you can be um like say something like level 15, and you might be dealing with some opponents around you, and maybe they're easy, maybe they have some difficulty, but it's just like they'll scale with you like throughout the game. So it's just like you could have like some characters later in the game like be really high level and still have the enemies pose a similar threat level. Like maybe it's easier to defeat some or harder to defeat some, but the idea is like you can get to level 99 and you still might have certain problems with certain enemies because they still scale with you. So it's just like you're getting stronger, but so are they. So it's not one of these things where like, hey, the characters in this area are X level, like 32, and they're gonna just pose this threat, and if you overcome it, you're good. It's like no, they're gonna get stronger. Um, and I hate that. But I bring all that up because if you properly use the junction system, you can make your characters, again, to use a mathematical term, you can make them stupidly broken. Like, you can play that game of drawing this spell, that spell, junction the right things to the right stats, like I was saying earlier, and just really get in there because, like, it's like you have to have a good understanding of, like, what the magic is going to do, right? It's just like, something like if I'm you gotta play around with the guardian forces, right? Like the guard forces. Sorry, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so like take for example, if I want like high HP, then I'm gonna want to like make sure I have like a lot of curative magic, right? Like to the highest degree, right? So you can play those sort of games. Same with attack, same with defense, same with speed. You got to figure out what works, but you can game the system. So it's like you're annoyed with that like level scaling. Fine, junction the right magic to the right stat, and you're good. And I think that's really cool. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna split this, which is again a pain editing, and I'll probably need to figure out a better method in the future. But for right now, I'm gonna pause. But for you, it'll be just like a second. I'll see you really soon. All right, so I'm back. And again, for you, it's like a second. But I didn't want to announce it, right? I had to announce it. I felt it within myself. I don't know, it's getting late. Okay, so Final Fantasy 9. 9 was one that I was late to the party on. It's just like I never got around to it. I had actually gotten it about a decade ago. And it just kind of it was in my backlog for a while. And so like a few years ago, I finally did play it. And oh my god. That game. It's a beautiful, beautiful game. And here's the thing, right? I knew some people who were like, "Oh, this is one of the lighter Final Fantasy games." Because like one of the cool things though is like there's a lot of callbacks like to earlier sort of Final Fantasy games, and that part was cool. But the lighter part got me. It's like, look, just because the game looks a certain way, like aesthetic wise, just because it has that art style doesn't mean it's a light game. Because if you play nine, you know. If you don't, I'm not gonna get into like super duper spoilers, but know this. Nine has that, like the chibi like characters and all that stuff, and it's very bright, very colorful. But don't be fooled by that aesthetic. It is one of the darkest, if not the darkest, Final Fantasy game I've ever played. And I dig it so much. But seriously, I dig it because, there's so much in that game about life and death and purpose. Because, like, for starters, if you played enough Final Fantasy games, it's like you will see a lot of that, right? Like, it's an anthology series. Each game is kind of taking place in their own world, although depending on what games you play, something like the city, they're connected, and that's a whole other thing. But like, they are connected, if nothing else, by a theme, right? Or several themes, rather, right? Because there's a lot about like life and death and purpose and nihilism. There's a lot about hope. There's a lot about hopelessness. There's a lot about found family, right? And of course, they're always fighting the big bad, right? And in Final Fantasy 9, there was just so much about life and death, and they really did a good job of showing how different characters do that. And like you would have like duos that contrasted, right? Like you might have one set where it's like, okay, they're very similar, but they're dealing with these things in slightly different ways, or you have a character that compares with another character, um, in that way, but then also a different one. So, in terms of like, I think the only bad thing that I have to say about Final Fantasy 9 is this: um, there was not enough Beatrix. Okay, there was not enough Beatrix. If you know that character, then you know what I mean. She is a boss, and they should have used her more. But seriously, Beatrix is one of my well, she is my favorite character in that game, along with Vivi. They're both like really cool characters for different reasons. And just all the characters were done pretty well. I did not like Kuja, but like in an enjoyable way. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, that guy. Um, I do think like the ending, to not get into it, like kind of threw me off. But like I've seen some people talk about it over the years. Where it's like, I mean, I get it. I get where they were coming from. It wasn't my favorite, but it kind of still worked within the themes of the game. So I'm like, all right, and it was dope. 10. How about 10? Final Fantasy 10. Like some of the other games that I've mentioned here, is somebody's favorite. It's a lot of people's favorites. Is it as good as people say? Yes, actually, maybe more so. 10 is an awesome game. It's like it is great. They do so much right, and it's like it was the first Final Fantasy that had voice acting, and they killed it. Um, so there's a point where Tidus and Yuna are having that conversation, and I think I know you might know where I'm going with this, but they do the laugh thing, and it gets made fun of in the English version because it's just like, he's doing this cringy laughing and ha ha ha. But here's the thing: it's just like the people who say that, right? They either haven't seen or played the game, or they played it and didn't get the point. Because, and I just bring it up because I've seen it a lot, right? So the whole point is like, and by the way, if you say Titus or Titus, you're good either way. I'm just saying, as far as I'm concerned. But like when Titus is having that conversation with Una, right? And the whole thing is to kind of like make yourself laugh in situations that are kind of awful, and that so-called cringeworthy laughter turns into genuine laughter in a moment that connects to characters. But no, people gotta go for the easy laughs. Wow, I'm weirdly defensive about this. But am I though? I don't think I am because it's just like I get sick of seeing that. But but more seriously though, there was a lot of cool moments like that where characters just got to connect. I do think there's a stupid plot point, like a spoiler. Um, well, I won't get into because I feel like if you don't know you going into it and finding out, just like it's just a real experience and you should have that. Um, I will say something that like the character does get called out on, but not enough is like Wacom. Like he's super racist in that game, but like again like, he kind of gets called out on that, but like not as much as he probably should have. Um, Also like I like the aesthetic for a lot of characters. And I like the combat system. I like some of the chances that they took. It just is a really good game. Again, good as people say, it's not better, and that's my personal opinion, but it's also the right opinion. All right, so what about 10-2? Is it as bad as people say? Because you'll hear a lot of people say a lot of good things about Final Fantasy X, but a lot of horrible things about Final Fantasy X too. So if they're right about Final Fantasy X, are they right about Final Fantasy 2? No. Final Fantasy X too. No, they're not right. I get where some people are coming from, but honestly, Final Fantasy X two is a good game. It does a lot of cool things combat wise, and it's different combat wise than Final Fantasy X, which can be jarring for some people. But I don't think that's the main issue that some people had with it. I think it's like the lack of some characters, and also just the tone. But I like it. It's doing its own thing, using characters and themes from the previous game. I like 10. I like 10 too. And while again, I get that some people do not share that opinion, those people are wrong. But more seriously though, I get that some people get defensive and they like 10 a lot and they didn't care for some of the changes in 10 2, but I don't think 10 2 deserves the bad rap that it gets. So if you notice, I didn't mention 11 because like when 11 came out, you kind of had to have the hard drive too. So it's like I never got to that, and maybe there's a way to get to that at some point or another because I would like to play it in the future just to get that exposure. But I didn't get a chance to play that back then. I could not afford it. For 12, I don't know what happened there. I don't know what happened there. I want to play it eventually, and maybe I'll get to play that this year. Because that came out on the PS2, and I think I forget that it came out on the PS2. Like, I don't know what was happening during that time. There was a lot. Because I think it came out in like 2006, and who knows what I was doing in 2006. I was in college in 2006, but there was a lot going on that year. It was a weird year. Um, but let's see, and back to Final Fantasy games that I haven't played. Um, Back for some of the earlier ones. Some of that was just an access thing, right? I didn't play 1 through 4 for a while because of the access, but then I found out that there were some things, or like it's like one, there were some issues with access. Then there were some things that helped with that access that I didn't know about. And then it just kind of went from there. I wanted to get the Pixel remaster, like since they're finally on consoles, but that's like $75, so no. And yeah, I could get the individual games, but they're like 20 a pop, something crazy like that. So I will try to find some cheaper versions of those down the line because I really would like to have that experience, and people really dig for. And from everything I hear about it, rightfully so. But anyway, back to the game. So 13, I played that, and it's like I think from a gameplay perspective, it's actually pretty decent. Though some people complain about being linear, and I get that to a certain point because there's like the first part about it is like very linear until it opens up a bit more. Um, but I like it overall. It's pretty fun combat wise. I'm not a big fan of the characters or the plot. But I like that I feel like outside of um, Final Fantasy VII, this is probably like one of the more diverse titles in terms of characters, which I dig. Um, Zaz was cool, and at the time when I played Final Fantasy 13, I had a fro. And here's the thing about that fro. Uh, Zaz had the same shaped fro as I did. And I was like, what? And that was awesome. Also, Lightning School. Um, I like her design and like her personality as well, just because it's just like she's tough, but she cares, if that makes sense, you know? Um, I didn't like Snow. Wait, that was the character's name, right? Like the big dude, blonde. I think it was Snow. You know who I'm talking about. But I did not like the big bad in that game. And again, the story was kind of like, it's not that it was boring, per se. It was like, I don't know, it felt really cruel to the characters in a sense. Anyway, um, I didn't hate it though. Like Final Fantasy 13 is a good game. I did enjoy it, or else I wouldn't have, actually completed it because I am not afraid to drop a game, even if it means fighting my compulsions. Um, so anyway, I like 13 for the combat. I'm just not a big fan of the stories, and even though I don't like all the characters, I like some of the characters, and I like the characters' designs either way. Um, so then 14, I did not play the initial 14, which, if I'm to believe what the internet says, was a train wreck. I did, however, play Realm Reborn. Um, it was dope, and I am not even an MMO fan. I'm not, right? Like I like my single player RPGs, not my massively multiplayer ones. However, fun is fun, and it was fun. And I knew a lot of friends that were playing, just not on the same server. So it was like, but we got to talk about it. So I haven't played in a while, but I did get that experience, and I think it was really cool. And oh my god, like I sunk a lot of hours into that in a short amount of time. Just saying. Um. So anyway, 15. 15 is a divisive title, to say the least. But I'm just gonna go out and say it. It's good. There's some people who are like, oh no, it's not this and it's not Final Fantasy and blah 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 blah. That's all Final Fantasy, all right? Um, and I like it. There's a lot of souls in that game, and I like trying these things for myself if I feel like it's something that I could like. Um, and then despite a lot of bad things I heard, I actually did enjoy the experience. It was a really fun game. There's some things towards the end that I absolutely did not expect, like in a good way. I was like, "What is happening? What?" It's wild. Um, I will say, like though, uh, Gladio was a jerk for parts of that game. But I like the characters and the story overall, and it just like it got kind of crazy. I'm not big on the whole royalty chosen one sort of stuff, but for what it was, I think it's done pretty well. And then of course you got that like the element of friendship that is throughout the game, and that's really cool. So 16. I have not played 16 because 16 hasn't come out yet. But here's the crazy thing. Here is the crazy thing. So at the time of this recording, right, it's like June 2023, early June. Like, it'll probably, I'm not sure when this will get out, but like I'm recording it June 8th. Um, Probably June 8th into June 9th at this point. But anyway, um, Final Fantasy 16 will come out pretty soon. And oh, sorry. Uh, I mentioned that because like one, that's cool, and despite all of the mixed discourse out there, I think it's going to be very like cool. And it's just like I think like one of the people who worked on the action segments worked on Devil May Cry 5, which is literally one of my favorite games of all time. So yeah, and it had like the sickest action. But yeah, so in addition to that, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is coming out early 2024 at this point. Like I just saw the trailer today, and it's like because okay, so at this point, right, I've talked about the mainline Final Fantasy games that I've played that I remember, and then like sequels and spin-offs, but I forgot to go into more detail about Final Fantasy VII Remake. So I know like that too is a divisive title because what isn't these days? But I don't care what anyone says. That game is awesome. It rocks. And though they took some chances at the end there, and it's like, whoa, I don't know how I feel about this. I actually like the changes, and I'm looking forward to what happens next. Final Fantasy VII Remake was dope. Is dope, and I'm looking forward to Rebirth. Like, It's just like, what? Yeah, we finally got to see more because like we've seen a lot of like Final Fantasy 16 stuff lately, and it's very exciting. So it's like, hey, what about the Final Fantasy it's like 7 Rebirth stuff? Where's that? And we're starting to see more about that, and it's kind of crazy that they're coming out in such short succession because I feel like we haven't seen this sort of thing since like the earlier Final Fantasy games, right? Where they're coming out in such close proximity. In any case, I'm very excited if you can't tell, right? It's hard to tell, right? Um, anyway, so I've played some of the spin-off titles like that weren't like spin-offs from a numbered entry. Um, now, one of the big ones is like the Cydia, um, Final Fantasy like NT. I like that game in terms of like just its idea and its gameplay. I do like it, but it's so weird and bizarre to me. Like, because I feel like if you had something more in line with what 15 had, what Final Fantasy 7 Remake had, and what it looks like 16 has had, then it'll be kind of cool. Because it's like, right, it is real time action, but it's like kind of stilted in some senses. So, but it's not bad. It's just different. And it has a story. But I can't tell you what that story is at this point. I remember bits and pieces, but I do remember that it's an interesting game. I do like it. And oh my God, Materia. I like her design. It's awesome. It's dope. And so, but it's fun to like go through and like experience these different characters from Final Fantasy in that title. I played Tactics. Um, Now here's the thing. Tactics is the kind of game where you would think that I'd be like super into it, just based on like everything that I know about me and what other people know. Because here's the thing, right? There's math all across the board and just everything, right? The gaming is no exception. Final Fantasy is absolutely not an exception. And while there's always been stuff that's on the surface, and there's always been stuff behind the scenes. The on the surface stuff when it comes to tactics, oh, it is out there. They're like, yeah, we want you to see the map. It's like, yeah, um, oh my god. But seriously, though, I mention that though because I like how explicit they get with the math. I like how they show people because I feel like, this whole time, right? A lot of us are doing the math and, we don't always write it down. We don't always do the calculations, consciously, but we're doing it all the time. But, in that game, they're telling you how this is working, how it's working. Because, like, and I think a lot of Final Fantasy games, a lot of RPGs in general, is like, you have an idea of your stats, you have an idea of what your weapons are going to do, and the changes there, and you're comparing yourself to the enemy, and you have a general idea of what's going to go down and how much damage you're going to do. But you like almost never see like the damage calculator or like the specifics of what's happening when you do this and when you do that, right? Final Fantasy Tactics, it kind of goes into that. But like I couldn't get with the gameplay. I dig what they were doing with the map. I was just like, but it wasn't my cup of tea, right? Like, but here's the thing. Though it's not my cup of tea, I absolutely get why it's someone else. And if nothing else, even though, like I said, it wasn't exactly my cup of tea, I don't regret playing it, and it's by no means bad. I was just way more excited about the explicit math and the gameplay, which I maintain is not a bad thing. Um, so let's see what else. What else? What else? Like I said, I played a little bit of Crystal Chronicles, but not enough to really talk about it. Just like remember, it seemed pretty cool. Um, any other spin-offs? I'm probably forgetting. Yeah, probably. But I'll say this: like, Final Fantasy is a long-running series, right? It's been going on for 35 years. It'll be 36 by the end of this year. It literally came out the same year that I was born. It is as old as I am, and I think that's pretty cool because like once I got a hold of it, once it got a hold of me, we both continue to grow in different directions, and it is a big part of my journey, and it has become a decent part of this channel, and I don't think that's stopping, and it's just because it's such a fun series, it's such a huge series, and it is again like even when you don't explicitly see the math, you're always doing the math, and I think Final Fantasy is a good series to talk about that. It's amazing. Um, Seven is definitely my favorite, and I think the only real reason like games like because like six has been in that spot, but I think the only reason why seven maintains so much persistence in terms of the top is because in addition to it being good, like, because right, like 6 and 7 are both really good. Actually, a lot of them are, but it's like 7 is not only good, but it's everywhere, right? Because think about that, right? Like, just the stuff that I mentioned in this video that I have dealt with. Um, Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Dirge of Cerberus, Advent Children, Last Order, and then, like I said, there's novels about Final Fantasy VII. Then there's also Before Crisis, which didn't make it over here, but you'll get to kind of play that in one form or another because of Ever Crisis, right? And then there was like the First Soldier, which I never got to actually play, but I hear mixed things. But my point is, there's a lot of Final Fantasy VII content, and so it's just like I think that's what makes it stand out, even amongst the really good games, just because you get exposed to it so much, and like you get a lot about that universe that get like fleshed out. But that being said, every Final Fantasy game is someone's favorite, and I get it, and I think that's really cool. Like, it's such a great series. Like I said, there's been some things that it has innovated, some things that it has popularized, and oh my God, its music is its own genre. All right, and I think that's dope. And just I look forward to the future of Final Fantasy. I get that some people do argue, they're like, oh well, I like old Final Fantasy, I like new Final Fantasy, and I think that's dumb. We're entitled to our opinions, but I hate when people say like, well, this is bad and that is bad. I like the turn-based Final Fantasy, right? I like the action based Final Fantasy. I can like Final Fantasy in the medieval era. I can like it in the steampunk era. I can like it in like the cyberpunk era. Wherever the game is taking place, I can dig it. A good game is a good game, and Final Fantasy, if nothing else, has actually been pretty consistent in that regard. I've never played a bad Final Fantasy game. All right, and again, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. There's nothing wrong with that. I just wish people weren't so hateful about other people's opinion. But that's all I got to really say on that because they can keep the hate. I think they should play the game instead, or play the games, and bond over the fact that someone else is digging this game in this series that you dig, and I don't see how that's not a win. But that being said, I've talked a lot about Final Fantasy at this point, definitely longer than I intended, but I am not mad about that. It was an absolute blast. Final Fantasy has been in my life for 20 years, and I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. But oh my God, I gotta eventually get a PS5 so I can stay up to date. Because I really want Final Fantasy 16, and even more than 16, I want Final Fantasy Rebirth. And because I don't have the PS5, I never got to play the Yuffie DLC for Final Fantasy 7 Remake, and I want to get to that at some point too. Because Yuffie's the kind of character that used to annoy me, but she grew on me. She really did. Um, but anyway, Final Fantasy is great. I look forward to again playing more of those games. And Kingdom Hearts was not a big focus of this video, but like I said, it involves Final Fantasy characters, and it was always trippy seeing them in that series. Um, and because of how well it's done, I feel like that's like allowed Square to continue taking some chances and making some other games, and that's awesome because one of those games that got made during this crazy run of just Final Fantasy and Square was like Nier Automata, my favorite game of all time. So it's like, yeah. And I feel like, Square wasn't in business. They weren't making that bank. That wouldn't happen. And also the awesome team that worked on it. But my point is like, Square has made some of my favorite games out there. And you could argue about some of their business practices, and you could argue that about just every other video game company and a lot of other companies, and rightfully so. But I am glad that they continue to make games that I enjoy and that people can enjoy. I just hope like they get better. A lot of video game companies overall get better, and a lot of companies in general. But that's a whole nother thing, isn't it? Whew, but I could talk about that all day too. But overall, yeah, Final Fantasy, it's amazing. And I will see you all in the next one.